riding in the country.
I thought it would be fun to take a look at a training block this week that's got quite a bit of TSS. Okay, so this week the total TSS according to Training Peaks is telling me it's 777. Okay, 777. And it's a bunch of sweet spot and threshold, which is really ramping up now. And I'm supposed to do a 4-hour group ride Friday, but I'm gonna have to push that back to Thursday. So that means that Monday is 2 times 15 at threshold. Tuesday's a bunch of sweet spot. Wednesday's a bunch of sweet spot. So no endurance rides, no recovery rides. Should have had a rest day Thursday, but that's getting pushed out. So the Friday ride's getting bumped up to Thursday. So it's gonna be 4 days back to back. In the past, I've done a lot of this. I would do blocks of 4 or 5 days and go pretty much high intensity. So I want to see how well I adapt to this. I'm getting up there in the training plan that I'm doing. I'm using a FastCat plan that I bought online. It's an 18-week plan. I'm in week 11 now, and I want to see how well my body can hold up to this. So one of the key things when you're really training hard is you've got to make sure your nutrition is on point and your rest and recovery is on point. So as I've said, I don't really have any recovery within the block. So it's really up to eating well, staying hydrated, and getting the appropriate sleep. I'm going to select routes that are pretty well suited to the intervals I need to be doing. It's fairly flat out where I live, and there's a lot of farmland, so that lends itself easy to doing long sweet spot and threshold intervals. And the roads are pretty quiet, and I'm also going to go out at times of day where there's not a whole lot of traffic. So my lovebirds just popping in and out from time to time. So if the camera goes out of whack, you know why. So let's take a look at day one over here, and I'll kind of talk you through the video as we take a look at it. So I'm heading out and warming up. This is a road near my house. It's a fairly quiet road, which makes it great to ride on. It's dead flat except for a couple of bumps at railroad crossings and a tiny little hill going over a highway. So it's a fantastic road leading you out. You can warm up at your leisure. It's long enough that you can get a decent warm up going. At this point, I just want to keep a nice steady pace, spin out my legs. We just got over a 2-week heat and humidity streak where it was just awful. So it's a little cooler today, and this is nice because you just feel better on the bike. I don't think I need to explain why it's nice when it's cooler. Yet here I am doing it. A lot of cornfields out this way, as you can see. I have a Garmin Varia rear light, in case you're wondering why I'm riding in the middle of the lane. I know whenever there's a car behind me, if I hear my radar beep, I'll pull over as far as I can safely to the right side to make room for the motorists. As long as I'm not hearing any beeps, I don't see any issue with staying in the middle of the lane. The pavement is clearly a lot better over there, as you can see. Those grooves are pretty wide. The cracks in the pavement, they're pretty rough. When you're rolling at speed, that can really pull your wheel. So the warm-up in this particular workout was 30 minutes. And I don't generally, if I'm training indoors, I don't generally train in erg mode, ERG, okay, because I don't like the trainer controlling my wattage. And what I want to do is be able to ride at a warm-up pace, so an endurance pace, and at the same time I want to be able to throw in some little intervals approximating the wattage I'm going to have to do for my work intervals. And I find in the FastCat programs the warm-up is really all endurance zone stuff. At least for this particular workout it was, and I didn't want to do that. So what I did was I would ride in endurance and then ride for a minute at FTP and then let my heart rate come down, and then ride for 2 minutes at FTP and let my heart rate come down. I did that a couple of times just to wake up the legs and wake up the heart and lungs. All right, well, my warm-up's done. Now it's time to do the work. I stopped here for a second to turn around. I'm gonna have a nice tailwind for at least the first interval, which is gonna be a lot of fun because a little extra speed, for me at least, gives me some extra adrenaline and it just makes it easier to push through. I stopped and I forgot to stop my bloody Garmin. So that's gonna hurt my overall speed, which for a piker like me, overall speed means everything, even though we know it means nothing. But in my head it means something anyway, so that's gonna bum me out, but whatever. So let's go do the work. I'm gonna turn off this camera and I'll just leave it on my handlebar camera for now, and we'll talk a little later. So now I'm starting my first interval. My target power is 230 watts. My FTP is 230. And on my Garmin, on my head unit, I have my 10-second power and then my lap power and my interval time for my interval page anyways. So every once in a while I'll glance down at my 10-second time and at my interval, my 10-second power rather, and my interval power. And I just try to ride by feel as much as possible. I don't like to stare at my head unit. I also like for my body to know, or for my brain to connect what my body is feeling when I'm riding at a specific wattage or interval. So I got a nice pass from that driver, so I gave them a wave. Little tip, if you're out riding and a driver gives you a good pass like that, if it's safe enough, take your hands off the bars. I always give a wave when possible. And for sure on my radar, if I see there's another car coming up behind them, I think it's great for the car behind me to see that I waved at the car in front and that I'm trying to be courteous. I think it just promotes good relationships between motorists and cyclists. We've got these bike paths out where I live, but they're not separate from the road, so I don't know how much protection you get from a painted line. I'll take it anyways. So I'm holding my wattage pretty steady here. Got a bit of a tailwind helping, which is nice. You'll see on the second interval coming back, even though I'm in the same general wattage, my speed is not what it is here because in this case coming back I'm fighting a headwind. My heart rate's pretty jacked for the wattage I'm doing. I have a max of about 178 and I would think here I'd be in the 158 to 160, but I noticed my heart rate was a fair bit higher even during my warm-up. And I don't know if it's sleep related, caffeine related, who knows what, but it's generally a little bit higher than what I would normally see. This is a nice stretch of road. You've got the water off to the right. It's just really pretty out here and the roads are quiet. So there you go. I finished lap 1, 229 average watts, so right on target. Starting my second interval now, and I made a huge mistake of eating right before the interval, about 5 minutes before. And I took a bunch of like little gummy candies and really shouldn't have done that. I should have just left it alone. I would have been fine for just 2 intervals. Just the food I ate during the day would have been enough. This workout had me doing 15 minutes on, 7.5 off, and then 15 again. So what that means is you're doing a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio, which is good. That's a good kind of pacing workout where you're not recovering as long as you're working. So you're keeping your intensity up. So you're not just riding at FTP, you're riding at FTP with a short recovery and then going back at it again. So this is that little bump I was talking about. This road runs parallel to the one I was leading out on in my warm-up. And they both have the same type of overpass going over the highway. Otherwise, it's negligible in terms of topography. It's just really flat. Looking back over the footage, it's just unbelievable. The sunlight at this time. I mean, there's a reason why they call this the golden hour. So I noticed in the first couple of minutes in my second interval, I could not get my power up. I just felt like I was going to puke. I'm certain it came down to eating 5 minutes before starting that interval and then drinking to help push down the food and stay hydrated. So, lesson learned. A big part of this is your learning curve. Right? Every workout should be able to give us some kind of takeaway. It's not just the physical benefit, but it's the lessons learned as well. And it could be so many things. It could be pacing, could be nutrition, could be just the way you talk to yourself in your head, how you approach the work. Certainly as diabetics, there's a whole extra layer of complexity there too. Right, I'm coming into this sport, I'm in my 50s. I came into this in my mid-40s. And came into it roughly around the time I was diagnosed, so there's a lot of layers there. All right, both intervals done. The first one was stronger than the second, and I think that's mainly down to the fact that I ate a handful of Haribo cola bottles in between the two intervals, which generally, if I'm doing fast-paced stuff like FTP and above, VO2 and such, something like that generally works real well for me. I think what happened was I ate it about 5 minutes. I had about 6 of them, 5 minutes before the next interval, and then gulped down a bunch of water. In the first 5 minutes, I just couldn't wind it up. I felt like I was going to vomit. Once my stomach settled, I gradually was picking my power back up. I finished a little under my target in the second interval, and I think if I would have had a couple of more minutes, I would have hit my target just fine. I'm going to take a look at the first 5 minutes of my second interval's power when I get back, and then take a look at the remaining 10 minutes or so, give or take. At least by memory, that's what it seemed like, where my power was a little more on target, and see if that's the case, because that's what it felt like while I was pushing on the bike. So my workout's done. That's day 1 of my 4-day block. I'm going to head down this gravel road right now, which ironically is right in my backyard, and I've never gone on this road before, but I've cycled by it probably a couple of 100 times at a minimum. So I'm just gonna spin out my legs and head back home and show you guys some really pretty farmland scenery out there.